Hi there, welcome to my channel, Sandy Croft Art Studio. My name's Sandy Croft and I've been painting watercolours for 35 years and teaching watercolours for 8 years. So in this tutorial we're going to be painting a surfer, and I just used 5 colours for this painting: lemon yellow, viridian green, ultramarine blue, they're the colours for the sea, and then as well as those colours, I'm adding alizarin crimson and raw sienna to paint the figure. You'll also need some masking fluid and an applicator. I used a little masking pen, but you can use anything that will do the job. You need 2 pots of water, a little bit of tissue, a couple of brushes. I used a large round with a good point and a wash brush. So let's get started. I've got my reference photo handy here, so that's what we're going to be painting. I'm not really going to be going by the colours on this reference photo. I'm going to be doing my own thing, so I'm going to put that aside. I think I got this photograph from pexels.com, which is a free reference photo site. There's also another one called unsplash.com, which does free reference photographs, which you can look at and download for free. So I've just wet the background. I've already masked this blue that you can see. This is masking fluid, which I applied earlier on and let it dry. The applicator is a ruling pen, which you can buy quite cheaply from Amazon or art stores, and I used masking fluid. I've just used a Vallejo liquid mask. This is quite good because it really is quite liquid and it flows quite well off of the masking pen. So let's put that aside. So I masked it already, everything is dry. I've probably put on more masking than I need, but that's okay because I'd rather have too much than too little. The masking fluid is going to reserve the whites for me. So I've wet the sea area at the background there, and I'm just letting that sink in a little bit. It's got a nice shine on the paper. I've got some dry areas there, so I'm just going to re-wet those. Have a little bit of patience with this because it takes a little while for it to settle into the paper. The paper I'm using is Bockingford 140 NOT, which is quite a good universal paper to use. It's not got a strong grain on it, which is fine for this sort of thing. Okay, so I've let that soak into the paper a little bit. I'm going to pick up some of my blue, my ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to swish this from side to side across the width of the paper. Bring it down. I don't mind it having streaks. In fact, I want it to have streaks because it's got to suggest sea in the background. And we're going to keep this fairly dark because the wave itself, I'm going to have the light coming through it from behind. So the wave itself is going to be fairly light. Also, do bear in mind that this is going to dry 30% lighter, more or less. Watercolours always dry lighter than they go on the paper, so do bear that in mind because some people start and they think, oh, that's quite dark colour, and then they're quite surprised and disappointed when it turns out to be very pale and they think, that looks a bit washy. Okay, so I've suggested a few waves in there as well. Okay, because I've got a line of masking along the top line of this wave, I can actually get in now and do a little bit of modelling on the wave itself. I haven't masked the figure, so I'm going to wet around the figure. I don't want to wet into the figure. So I'm just going to carefully paint around the figure with clean water I've got 2 tubs of water on the go. I've got a clean one and a dirty one which I wash my brush off on. And before I pick up any of the pigment, I always wash my brush off so that I keep clean colours. So just wetting this wave again, wetting around the figure. I'm using a size 14 LG synthetic brush to do this. Working fairly quickly. It's amazing how quickly you can get these sort of paintings done, really. So we're doing this in 3 stages. We've got the background wash, we've got the wave itself, and then we've got the foreground wash. There's some little bits in there as well that need to be coloured. Okay, so as I said, I want the sun shining through, to give the impression that the sun is shining through this big wave behind the surfer, which is going to light up the surfer. I'm going to have the sun coming from the top left onto the surfer. So I'm going to bear that in mind for the shadows, which are going to come later. So always start with your lighter colour, which is in this case lemon yellow. I'm just going to plop some of this in here. And the other colours are going to mix into this lemon yellow, which is going to look rather gorgeous. They blend really well, these colours. And they do give it that feeling of the sea. I suppose my mix of colour is sort of a creamy consistency. There's not too much water mixed with them because I've already got water on the page, so you don't need to have watery colours to go in, but enough to activate the paints. Okay, so I've got my lemon yellow down. I'm now going to dip into this gorgeous Viridian green, which is a bright green. I really never use Viridian green on its own. I always use it as a mixer. So I'm looking at my reference photo, and there's quite a lot of surf around here, which I've masked off. I want a little bit of shadow at the top here. You can see this just mixes beautifully. It's such a lovely colour. And when I add ultramarine blue to that, you're going to see that it just mixes so well. Right, so I'm washing my brush off in the dirty water, then in the clean water, patting it off on my towel, picking up some ultramarine blue. I'm looking at my reference photograph again, so I want it to be darker just under the lip of the wave. So I'm just going to drop some blue in here. It's quite dark over this side. I'm going to keep this side fairly dark, I think. We've got lots of colour coming now with this blue, which is beautiful. I love this colour. It's just so lovely when it mixes with the green and the yellow. I'm going to keep that fairly green, I think, around here. I've got a little bit of bleed there into the sea area, but that's fine, that's okay. We don't mind that. I want to give the feeling of movement because the surfer's come over here and he's pushing the wave out this way, so I want to kind of suggest that with my strokes, with my brush strokes. So I'm going to pull the colour out just to add to the movement. Everything's wet, so I can still keep manipulating the colours. If it starts drying, stop putting colour on the page, because then you'll just get blooms and it'll look very unnatural. I've also got a little bit of tissue handy here. So what you can also do is you can lift off a little bit of colour while it's still wet with the tissue, and that's just going to add to those waves here, because the waves are whooshing up from the surfer. So we're just going to model this area here. I want to model that. Let's change my tissue again. Get a clean bit. So I'm going to come over this side. I'm just going to model this a little bit. That's what we call a happy accident, so I'm not going to do anything about that because I quite like that effect. Yeah, okay, let's carry on with this. Okay, now when I take off the masking fluid, they're going to be bright whites, and these are going to be kind of more shadowy. Okay, pull off a little bit of colour up there, a little bit of colour up here. We can bring that up here too. Okay. Right. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to dry and I'll be back in a moment.